Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're tackling a seriously mind-bending question. What if physics is pointing toward what we call God? We're going to be exploring the fascinating work of researcher, inventor, and author Kevin L. Brown, and looking at how some of humanity's absolute oldest spiritual ideas might actually be describing a deep, measurable structure in physics. Pretty wild, right? So we're starting right off with the biggest question of them all. Where did everything come from? I mean, what are we a part of, and where is all of this ultimately heading? For thousands of years, we've tried to figure this out. It's this massive, core question about who we are, but usually the ways we try to answer it end up splitting us right down the middle. Which brings us to Section 1, the core problem of two different worlds. Historically, we've kind of been forced to pick a side. On one hand, religion answers the big question with concepts like a creator, a source, or a return to unity. On the other hand, science uses terms like physical origins, fundamental fields, and information complexity. For a really long time, these were treated as totally separate things. I mean, a religious experience isn't exactly a lab result, and a math equation isn't a deity. They don't usually mix well at dinner parties. But what if these two completely different vocabularies are actually just describing the exact same underlying pattern? That leads us to Section 2, the hypothesis. The Universal Convergence Point. Kevin L. Brown's research actually builds a structural bridge between these two worlds. And the really cool part is that it doesn't start by assuming a deity exists. Instead, it looks at how systems, boundaries, and information move together. Just think about this quote for a second. What if source is not a place reality left billions of years ago, but the center of a process reality has never stopped moving through? This idea completely flips the geometry of how we view the universe. We usually picture time as a straight line, right? Like a starting gun goes off in the past, and the future is the finish line. But what if reality is actually moving around a center, rather than just walking away from a starting point? This brings us to the Universal Convergence Point, or UCP. In simple terms, the UCP suggests reality operates like a loop centered around one common, stable point. Think of a process where things break apart and become separate. That's what we call differentiation. But eventually, that breaking apart is matched by things coming back together, which is integration. It's kind of like a giant jigsaw puzzle being dumped out of the box, only to slowly build itself back into a perfect picture. The UCP is the stable center of that entire process. Let's move to Section 3, the recursive loop, flowing outward and inward. To really picture how this works, imagine a shape like a donut, where energy and information flow out from the middle, wrap around the outside, and pull back through the center in a continuous cycle. Here is how that loop works step by step. First, you have the source, the center point. Second, information blasts outward, creating distinct experiences, separate bodies, and boundaries. Third, the movement bends back inward and things start to connect and integrate at higher levels. And finally, you get reconvergence, returning home to the center. It's a constant, flowing circulation. When you look at this flowing process, it suddenly makes sense why so many ancient traditions sound so similar. If you're on the outward path, moving away from the center looks like origin or creation. But from the inward path, moving back toward that exact same center looks like return or ascension. The center itself never moved, only our direction of travel changed. And here's a really crucial detail. This reconvergence isn't just a closed circle that erases everything. If it were a perfect circle, the universe would just repeat the exact same story endlessly. Instead, it's a spiral. Think of leveling up in a video game. You might return to the start menu, but you keep all your stats, your history, and the memories you gathered along the way. The universe returns carrying the informational history of the whole cycle. Now for Section 4. What it does not prove, keeping strict scientific boundaries. To keep things rigorous, we have to be incredibly clear about what this theory leaves out. Finding a mathematical convergence structure in physics does not automatically mean that structure has a personality, moral agency, or creative will. Maximum integration is not the exact same thing as a conscious mind. So the UCP does not prove a personal God, it doesn't prove an afterlife, and it doesn't prove any specific religion. It gives us a structural shape that mirrors those ancient ideas, for sure, but it does not settle theology. And for this to be real science, it absolutely has to be testable. It must define exactly what is evolving, establish strict ways to measure it, and make very distinct predictions before the outcomes are known. It also has to be tested against conventional models. Basically, if a theory cannot lose, it cannot be called science. Which leads to our final part, Section 5. Real-world implications beyond philosophy. So what if this hypothesis can win? If a cross-domain convergence principle were actually proven, it would fundamentally alter our understanding of the world, even if you never ever use the word God. It would completely change how we study complex systems. Instead of treating biological ecosystems, social networks, or even artificial intelligence as just random parts piling up, researchers could see them as transitional structures, all moving toward integration. This leads to such a beautiful perspective-shifting idea. Human experience is totally dominated by separation, right? Separate bodies, separate minds, separate nations. But under this model, separation is not a mistake. Our differences and boundaries aren't just noise to be erased. They are the actual informational content the universe is generating. Difference allows for relationship creates interaction, and interaction builds the history that the universe ultimately integrates. I want to leave you with this one provocative thought. For thousands of years, humans have talked about returning to source, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end. Perhaps humanity's oldest spiritual intuitions were just recognizing a structural pattern of physics all along. So what if what we call source isn't where reality began, but the center it never actually left?